First new album in nearly 7 years, Life is But a Dream, will release on June 2nd.
It's got a lot of what we've done before, but it comes in spurts. Everything from the way we arranged the record to how we were thinking about time and thinking about left turns and thinking about structure. We kind of just flipped everything on its head and we took things that we would normally do longer and milk and we cut those down, and we also took things that we would normally just kind of pass by and we milked them. So we kind of did a lot of different things with arranging. There's a lot of different genres in there. There's a blend of things, but it's not just to do them. They're things that we really feel passionate about, and they're areas that we really wanted to explore. Production-wise, it's all organic. We pride ourselves on there's a lot of things that are in there, like where you could say, well, there's a vocoder. Well, it's a real vocoder. There's auto-tune, but it's hard auto-tune on purpose. There's no auto-tune when we're not trying to let you think there's auto-tune. There's organic drums. There's no drum samples unless we want a specific sample. So there's all these really organic things done in a futuristic way, I guess. So it sounds different than what most people are doing these days. So there's a lot to get into there, but it's I think it's interesting.
Yeah. And I've gotten a chance to listen to the album, and I can just tell that, there's been so much thought and care that's put into it, and there's some very heavy songs on there, and it's very musically diverse, and the songwriting is top notch. So I think it's obviously a high quality album. So, it very, very well done. So talking about the album cover here as well, and some of the artwork that's come out, first I wanted to say kind of what was the art direction behind that. And I'll get to some of that in the broader sense, because the music video, I thought, had so much depth to it. And it's kind of almost like it's a commentary on maybe the meaning of life. I don't know if I'm close on that, but, what's sort of the idea behind the artwork, and what's your process for that? Because I know you're very creative.
Yeah, so we were lucky enough to have been friends with Wes Lang for the last 6 years. And he's one of those guys that doesn't do anything that he doesn't want to do. And I think a few years ago, I'd asked him if he would do the record. The answer was no. Love you, pal, but no. And the last thing he'd done a thing for the Grateful Dead, which is his favorite band, and he had also done the Yeezus record. So those are the only things in music that he had done. And then he'd also done, and he was kind of done with music, didn't really like dealing with labels, etc. So the last thing he did was he did the Amiri line, the last 2023 Amiri line, which was all Wes Lang produced stuff. And then he's just one of those guys that his art is killer. But what I love about him is his sort of introspection on death always looming. And this record was also about the human consciousness and the idea that the reason that we are different from everything else that lives on this planet is that we understand that we're going to die someday. And knowing that you're going to die someday, sometimes you're left with this kind of crossroads of what is the purpose of life if it all gets washed away anyways. And so there's a lot of themes in the record that go down that rabbit hole of mundane, meaninglessness, purpose, existentialism. So all these different thoughts, and the record explores that. So when I was sending Wes demos, one day he hit me up and said, I did the art for the record. And I'm like, what? Wow. So it was like one of those things where if you don't ask, he just did it because he was inspired. And I had told him that a painting that he did called Nobody inspired me and Brian to make this song called Nobody. We sent him Nobody in a demo form. And he's like, bro, this is blowing my mind. This is so cool. Didn't even have the lyrics on it yet. We didn't even have the Nobody part. It was just the riff and like the groove. And then, a couple months later, I sent him some other stuff. I sent him Cosmic. I sent him a couple things, sent him Game Over. Just demos. And one day he hits me up and he sends me a picture, one of the pictures. And I'm like, this is incredible. And he sends me 3 more pictures. And then an hour later, he's got 4 more pictures. And he just was in a zone and he's just going with the demos going. And I explained to him what the concept was. And these are all things that he writes about all the time. These are things like, if you look at all the sayings that are on there, they're all like this sort of death around the corner, this sort of eerie, uncomfortable sense of life happening while you know that you're going to not exist at some point.
But it's true.
It's true. And so sending him that, and then him working off the music, and then us singing the art, and then finishing our record, it was like art was influencing art back and forth. Then all of a sudden he's like, I got 20 pieces for you. And we're like, whoa, okay. So then the hard thing was figuring out which would be the album cover. And then we kind of just got really, to be honest, we got really loose with that too. We're like, who needs an album cover? Right. Let it be a vibe, right? Multiple album covers, let it be just a vibe. And so that's where we're at now. This is, this is a Death Bats Club exclusive. So only Death Bats Club can get that. And this is the standard. And then, there's a ton of art in it. It's great.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I love the art direction behind it. And I wanted to talk about the music video as well, because the music video is kind of talking about that as well. The death is looming around the corner. But I wanted to see if kind of, the person in the video, that when you first start that video, it gets up and kind of goes out of his soul, walking away. And it's kind of like, to me, this guy, maybe he was in a bit of a rhythm in his life and he was kind of taking his life for granted, and it just not really, I think a lot of people feel at a certain point like, okay, I'm aging, I need to go for this. And is that kind of maybe in the same neighborhood of what you guys were going for with that person just walking through and looking at all these experiences as the world kind of passed them by?
Well, it has a few different meanings that people can take from it. My meaning from that music video, nobody came from a 5-MeO DMT psychedelic experience.
Oh, wow.
And so, and what happens with those experiences is you experience a thing called ego death. And so that was our visualization of ego death. Now, when I did this, I remember being with the shaman, inhaling this thing, and being put onto my back as the whole world fractaled out. Like the whole thing just started breaking apart. Reality started breaking apart, and I left my body. And so I was able to look at my body, and then I tried to get back in my body because I was so scared. Mm-hmm. And then that's when you go further and further and you lose yourself and you forget you're even a human. So that was our representation. We could have done it with a soul leaving, but we thought the representation of skeletons was like a cooler aesthetic.
Yeah.
But what was happening was, now you'll notice at the end of the video, there's a suicide note. Adieu is yes, farewell. So did he kill himself and he was leaving and that was his death, or was it an ego death? Was he exploring the existence of man and the mundaneness of our lives? If you actually go and see the first scene, he walks outside and there's a family just watching TV, watching their TV as their life goes away.
Yeah.
And there's a guy staring in the mirror, a skeleton in the mirror, and that's stolen from The Stranger, which is a book by Albert Camus, where this guy doesn't find meaning to life and he's looking in the mirror and he thinks he's smiling, but what's staring back at him is a frown. He's actually been sad the whole time. And then you'll notice outside there's a noose, and that comes in play in the song Game Over. So there's all these like Easter eggs. So when you hear Game Over, this guy realizes he never had free will anyways.
Yes.
And there's a mundane life and he kills himself. But we don't blame him for killing himself because he didn't have free will and it was genetics and it was going to happen anyways. It's like this determinism. So the music video has all these like things that you can take out of it, but it really was a very on the nose look at ego death and walking through this sort of existential reckoning of our lives.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's just absolutely brilliant, because when I watched that video, it came across to me. Also, there's a part where he goes into a very colorful landscape. Maybe that's a representation of heaven. Maybe that's something like that. But also, everything has been commoditized there. Everything has a barcode on it. And it's kind of like maybe we have taken everything that we love and that's beautiful in the world and turned it into a commodity, maybe.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of an Easter egg for the song Mattel in there, because Mattel is very Truman Show. It's all set up and fake.
Oh, wow. Truman Show.
Yeah. And so what I take from that scene is that when you go to this place of ego death, you can call it whatever you want. It can be heaven. It can be oneness.
Right.
It can be nothingness. It's all nothingness and everything at once. And that's where the song Nobody, the Man Without a Head, these are all meditative Buddhist sort of ideas, practices. But the idea of no ego and the idea of being in a place that was promised, but it was never real to begin with.
Yeah.
Right? This sort of heaven that you're going to go to, or the promised land, or the golden gates, or this, and you go there and go, oh, this was all kind of made up to give me a purpose. But the purpose was never real to begin with. It was, because what I think is funny, and I've had this argument with people, they say morals have to be given to you, and religion gives you morals. And I say, well, if I have to give you your morals, then I'm an authority figure at that point. You don't have any freedom. And they go, no, no, no. Well, everyone would just be killing each other if they didn't have morals. And I go, I don't agree. I think through evolution, we have figured out that the people that get along with the tribe the most, the people that have their family, the people that can get along and build, they're the ones that actually evolve and live on. Because if you're a murderer, you get murdered and now your lineage is done. Yeah. And so I look at it as a different thing. I don't look at it as someone has to hand me morals and they go, I know you want to kill that guy, but you shouldn't. Right. Because I don't want to kill that guy. I just don't feel that way. And so I don't need morals handed to me. And so I feel like that's like the golden promise of if you listen, you'll be rewarded. I never bought into that. And so that land to me is the fake promise of, an afterlife.